While binging InuYasha, I found a long video with a title claiming it to be the greatest, so I decided to watch it to see if there were any convincing arguments made. There were good parts and bad parts, but since the YouTuber, Lonely Boy Adventurer, took the time to praise an underrated classic, I decided to further the conversation by responding. First, reversing a trend is not inherently better than perpetuating a trend. This is the same argument that the deconstruction crowd tries to use for stories like Hunter x Hunter or Berserk. I know that here, he's arguing about Rumiko Takahashi's writing style, but later, he will use being different as an argument for why InuYasha is great. You could call this the not like other girls argument. He says most women in battle manga are either men with boobs or the fantasy of men. I believe his quote about women feeling like clay figurines is a reference to the second type. He shows images of Esdeath while saying this. He says that Esdeath is a character that will become whatever the plot wants her to be regardless of her established personality. But there is maybe only one other battle manga that I'd say that does this, and it's Fairy Tail. And even then, the women still feel like actual characters. Then he says that InuYasha's women transcend being character archetypes. This is a statement that can be said about several battle manga. Yu Yu Hakusho, One Piece, Bleach, Naruto, Magi, Jujutsu, Black Clover, etc. Even though Fairy Tail does use archetypes here and there, the characters are eventually fleshed out as real people. He says women usually have gimmicky or unfounded emotions. I'd need examples for this, because I can show 3 examples countering this from the big 3, which are the main representatives of the genre. In One Piece, Nami's reaction to the entire Arlong situation is realistic. In Naruto, Sakura is hurt by Sasuke calling her annoying, which parallels the example he gave for InuYasha. In Bleach, Orihime makes the decision to go with Aizen and the Arrancars to protect the people she cares about. I could name several more, but I don't think it's necessary. I'm not going to tackle the mannerisms because he didn't say that other manga don't do it. Now, the second half of his women argument. I don't understand the part about Kagome being able to help InuYasha integrate back into society because she's a woman. His part about Kikyo does make sense though. For Kagura, he says her design and abilities are all feminine. I don't know if any other battle manga woman has a design and personality as detailed and tied to femininity like Kagura, but this is only one character. I'd maybe say Lust from FMA or Boa Hancock from One Piece. Like Kagura, they are both seductive characters in seductive outfits. Also, there are definitely women who wear feminine clothes and have fighting styles that take their physique into account. He points out that Kagura attacks with wind abilities rather than brute force because women of her build wouldn't be able to realistically. Boa Hancock has the ability to petrify any opponents that show love or lust towards her. This is both feminine and fits her build. Kurenai from Naruto uses illusions. This fits her build. Orihime from Bleach uses long-ranged magical attacks. Rukia may use her sword, but her combat relies on freezing opponents rather than speed or strength. Lucy from Fairy Tail relies on summonings, and Levi relies on long-ranged magic. Shinobu from Kimetsu literally doesn't have the strength to behead demons like her allies, so she uses poison. I could mention Nami, Robin, Shizune, and more, but I think I've made my point. These stories do have women that fight like Hercules, but they also have women that don't, so I wouldn't say this is special to InuYasha. Furthermore, having Herculean women is not inherently worse than having delicate but powerful women. A fighter like Urza and a fighter like Lucy both have their merits. If that's what Lonely Boy Adventurer prefers, then that's his decision. But I do think he should specify this rather than stating it like it's a fact. A person can imply that something is their opinion without saying it, but here I didn't get that implication. His points about Sesshomaru and character relationships in general are good, but again, I don't think this is unique to InuYasha, even in just the battle genre. However, InuYasha's relationship with his father is pretty unique. I can't easily name another manga that executes a relationship like that. The puzzle element is pretty cool, but the story is not entirely in first person. There are several scenes of Naraku and other antagonists when they are away from the main cast, but his main point about the puzzle still stands. It's definitely something I don't see often, or written as well. He says that InuYasha is the ultimate anime or manga in terms of it's the journey, not the destination. This is one of the most well-put, bold claims I've heard in an analysis video, because he claims the story is the superlative, but in a specific category, and I'm inclined to agree. InuYasha is one of the few anime where I don't care if I'm watching filler or not, because simply seeing the characters interact and go on adventures is fun. However, I don't think a flashback or recollection is worse than the characters being in the present time. He says it gives them a destination, but InuYasha has a destination too. Then he says that it feels like the events are caused by an external entity. I disagree with that. Next, he compliments the character development and says that it enhances the journey focus. I don't think the development is unique here, but that's not what he's arguing, so I guess I agree. While I do like InuYasha and Kagome's romantic relationship, I don't know if I'd say it's better than any anime or manga romance. If he stuck to battle manga, I definitely agree. but in general, there are romance anime that don't start with love at first sight between the eventual couple. Toradora, Lovely Complex, Nisekoi, Maid-sama, and Kami-sama Kiss are the first ones to come to mind. He also mentions that a shared mutual interest is a cliche, but InuYasha and Kagome have that, and it's Sushiko and Jewel. His next cliche is villains who become good guys just because the protagonist is a nice guy. He shows Vegeta for this. I'm going to throw Piccolo into my rebuttal as well. Both of these characters start as villains, are forced to work with the heroes to fight a greater threat, and over time, they lose their urge to be evil. Piccolo only joined up with Goku to fight Raditz. He even kills Goku in this fight. Then, he hears that stronger Saiyans are coming, so he trains Gohan so that they can increase their odds of winning. While training with Gohan, he warms up to him enough to sacrifice his life for him in battle. Then in the Frieza arc, there's a new foe that they need to team up against. By the end of the Android saga, he's done being a villain. As for Vegeta, he teams up with the heroes to fight Frieza, but still shows evil traits. It's only after he dies and is revived does he start to cool off. And then, starting a family with Bulma brings him to the light side even more. He says something about Florence Nightingale when showing Kabuto. I don't understand what this means, but I can explain his change too. Itachi put him in the Izanami, which is a jutsu that can only be escaped when the victim realizes how they were wrong. Kabuto escapes eventually, which means that he eventually realized where he went wrong. Additionally, Lonely later brings up that InuYasha's backstory hints that there was always good in him. So does Kabuto's. He was an innocent child until Orochimaru began manipulating him. Lonely tries to argue that many villains betray who they were, but again, this is not true. He only uses examples of bad to good villains from other stories, but never uses villains who develop but stay bad. Aizen, Doflamingo, Crocodile, Lucci, Toguro, Sensui, Kimimaro, and most of the Akatsuki are a few that I can name. And for good to bad villains, specifically in Naruto, their change makes sense because they are recognizing a flaw within their own logic, not betraying who they were. He says InuYasha's characters never leave the realm of reason for their personalities, but obviously his realm of reason is subjective, so it's likely that we don't agree that other anime characters stay within there as well. He compliments some of the characters and the symbolism, and I agree. Next, he says the power development reflects the journey aspect and explains how the personal journey of Sesshomaru and InuYasha are reflected in his abilities and weapons. This is a good point, but not one that is completely unique to InuYasha. Ichigo from Bleach has his powers connected to his character development. It includes Bankai, the Hollow Mask, and his true Shikai and Bankai. Next, he talks about InuYasha's different techniques and how they all remain relevant until he gets his final move. The second half of this statement is untrue. Red Tessaiga falls out of use pretty quickly. After he defeats Naraku for the first time, there's a long stretch of episodes where he doesn't use it when it could be useful. Mount Hakurei has a barrier and he didn't even try to use it. When Hakudoshi got Entei, InuYasha shot a regular wind scar and it was blocked by a barrier. He knew that it was Naraku's incarnation and didn't even try to use the red version. I had to look up why he stopped using it, and the answer I got was that Takahashi forgot about it and eventually made Naraku's barriers too powerful for it. Then he says that contrary to most battle manga, all of InuYasha's abilities serve a specific purpose. That's wrong. I'll give him half, but not most. While a lot of Zoro's moves are repetitive, he has close range attacks, dashing attacks, and projectile attacks. So some attacks are interchangeable, but there are those with specific purposes. Bleach is a different kind of example. Most characters in Bleach have one move in their Shikai and one move in their Bankai. Therefore, each move has a purpose. The same can be said about most stands. Then there's Naruto. His primary abilities are Shadow Clones, Transformation, Rasengan, and Summoning. Each of these have a unique purpose. Rasengan does get upgrades, but Sage Mode Rasen Shuriken has a purpose, and that's to be a projectile. We can then look at Sasuke. Each of his fire style techniques have a different purpose. Chidori has its own purpose, and then the variations of the move have their own purposes. Other manga with purposeful movesets are Magi, Jujutsu, and Hunter x Hunter. He says that unique powers make every battle different from each other, but even manga that have the main character using one power find ways to do this, and that's by making the opponents unique. Early Bleach, Kimetsu, and Part 1 of One Piece are perfect examples of this. He says that a problem that plagues most anime is why the main character doesn't spam their most powerful technique. But which anime are we talking about? I would agree that Goku could spam Kamehameha and instant transmission more, but his other moves have reasons for not being spammed. Kaioken hurts his body and Spirit Bomb has prep time. Yusuke's strongest move is Spirit Gun, and he uses this in every fight. During the Dark Tournament, he had a limited number of shots, so he couldn't spam it. Naruto spams clones and Rasengans, especially towards the end. Luffy didn't spam Gear 2nd or 3rd because they both had negative drawbacks. Ichigo does spam Getsuga. Which characters aren't spamming moves that should logically be spammed? Additionally, he praises InuYasha for finding a reason not to spam, but InuYasha does spam Windscar. Next, he says that because his new abilities have conditions, it allows him to struggle against opponents that are technically weaker than those he's beaten before. I agree with this, but battle manga have done this a lot with what I call the puzzle formula in my video on power escalation and solutions. Basically, instead of increasing the power of the opponents, you change the complexity of their power. Each puzzle is difficult in its own way. That way difficulty isn't linear. The main way this is done is by giving enemies unique powers or fighting styles that can't be dealt with by brute force. A few stories that do this are Kenshin, JoJo, Naruto, Hunter x Hunter, early One Piece, and early Bleach. He talks about power escalation later, but I just covered that. A lot of manga do eventually fall into the trap of bigger and better, but the big three all started with creativity and strategy and held on to that for a very long time. He says that this escalation delegitimizes all of the training the hero went through, which I disagree with. I don't see how he reached that conclusion. He then says that power escalation makes the characters come off as being weaker than before. I only agree with this when discussing physical escalation. For example, in part 1, Sasuke's speed is hyped up a lot, especially against Haku, Gaara, and Naruto. But in part 2, it feels like Kishimoto forgot how fast he used to be. But when it comes to the magical aspect, this is usually not the case. Moves like Getsuga and Rasengan always feel as powerful as when they were first introduced. He brings up a counter, which is that they have control over the devastation of their attacks since they're stronger. Lonely thinks this is reasonable, but I think this is ridiculous. If they can control their devastation, why would they lower it to a point lower than the previous arc? Why not just keep it at a consistent level? That just sounds like inconsistency. Next, he says that there are multiple ways that a character can be powerful. I agree with this point, and he argued it well, but again, this isn't unique to InuYasha. Look at Orihime from Bleach. In the final arc, she was making shields strong enough to block the final antagonist and had unparalleled healing abilities, but she can't easily win a fight by herself. This is interesting because he brings up Naraku, who can't attack too well, but has powerful defense and regeneration. My favorite example from Naruto is Obito. He isn't blowing stuff up to cause a powerful threat. He's slipping through attacks and sucking people into his Kamui dimension. 3 powerful characters had to gang up on him to stand a chance. I could also bring up Aizen from Bleach, who hypnotizes his opponents and attacks them while they're vulnerable. Before absorbing the Hogyoku, he never really overpowered anyone, except for Ichigo. JoJo is full of this. I agree with his balance between the 2 main characters. He talks about power scaling again, but I think I've said my piece on that already. Then he talks about filler. I agree with a lot of what he said. In summary, InuYasha is a very episodic battle story, so if you go into it blind without knowing what filler is, and that InuYasha has it, it'll be really hard to guess which is which. The filler blends so effortlessly because of the episodic nature. I say this from personal experience. His point about Ayame is like the nail in the coffin. I didn't even know she was filler, and it adds to Koga's character very well. He's InuYasha's love rival, but it's painfully obvious that he'll lose, so the anime gives him a backup that will eventually become his love interest. Brilliant on the anime's part. He also says that the anime expanded on minor content in the manga, which is a smart move to make episodes or scenes feel less like filler. Next, he says that InuYasha has a unique way of improving rather than just training and getting stronger. Here are some examples from other stories. Naruto improved for Shuriken by throwing it. Luffy improved Gear 3rd by removing the drawback of Mini Luffy. Ichigo improved his Hollow Mask by learning to keep it on for longer periods of time. He also improved his Shikai and Bankai by learning about his heritage and having a new sword forged. Alibaba from Magi improved Amo Saika by shrinking it to fit his royal swordplay. I'm sure there are other examples, but these stories all do have a little bit of simply increasing power through training, so his point has some merit. He then talks about InuYasha being different from other stories, but again, being different isn't inherently better. I don't think that a character enjoying fighting automatically makes the gravity of the situation weaker, but I do agree that the hero not taking the fight seriously could result in disaster. I disagree with the argument that InuYasha always starts off with his strongest attack. Not every fight is opened with a wind scar. As for holding back, I tackled the entire concept of having characters hold back in my analysis on why power scaling doesn't work. It basically amounts to fights being made more interesting, which is also what Lonely says. He says InuYasha's fighting style evolution makes it feel like he's always going all out. I disagree. The main reason being Blades of Blood. This is a powerful projectile attack that InuYasha rarely uses. Instead, he uses Iron Reaver Soul Stealer, a close-range slash attack. That never made any sense to me, and I chalk it up to the author either forgetting or knowing how powerful Blades of Blood were and wanting to extend the fight. Blood Claws is basically a long-range version of Iron Claws, but for some reason, he not only prefers iron, but will get close to use it when he's in long range. Additionally, there are several instances in the season before the final act where he doesn't even use Adamantine Barrage against a barrier. He then says that once InuYasha got to Saiga, he'd rarely use his claws because the Saiga was better. The same can be said for several battle manga with transformations. Goku uses Super Saiyan in every fight once he gets it. Luffy uses Gear 2nd and 3rd in almost every fight once he gets it. Ichigo uses Bankai and a Hollow Mask in almost every fight once he gets them, and until he still has them. Sasuke uses Sharingan in almost every single fight once he gets it. I've made my point. He then basically says that blood claws fall out of use because it's flashy and not effective. I already pointed out how blood was more effective than iron. I agree with his points about the Shikon Jewel. I also agree with his points about Naraku, but I don't think that automatically makes him a better villain. He says most motives for anime villains are made fun of for being generic or lackluster. This is yet another hasty generalization. DBZ may have had basic villains, but almost every battle manga afterwards didn't. Yu Yu, Kenshin, One Piece, Naruto, Bleach, and more have complex villains and are even complimented for them. What's worse is that Naraku's goal is actually lackluster in comparison to them. He wants to become a full demon. There isn't a complex backstory or philosophy accompanying it like the others I just named. The villains from InuYasha aren't special. His analysis of Bankotsu being a good foil is good though. Later, when talking about the 7 deadly sins, he says lust is often used incorrectly. I agree with this for FMA, but not for Taizai, which he later shows on screen. Gother's sin was about him committing a lustful act, which by his standards means it was done correctly. He later says that the sins lack any subtlety and compliments InuYasha for being subtle. Once again, that's just a preference. A group of characters based on the sins isn't better or worse for being subtle or not. I do agree with the restrictions of being representations. Then he says current anime and manga lack focus on the environment. Once again, the big three, Fairy Tail, Magi, Radiant, and more, all have well-developed settings that InuYasha can't compare to. He makes hasty generalizations with very little support. Most of his generalizations can easily be disproved. His compliments about the settings are ones that are applicable to several battle manga and anime. A lot of the points made afterwards are good. The biggest reason is that he compliments InuYasha on what it does well without comparing it to others and inaccurately putting them down to praise the former. But then he goes back to comparisons with the ending. He says that the MC becoming a father and repeating the cycle makes the story feel meaningless. I agree that watching the kid surpass the adult is not entertaining, but not only does that not make the story meaningless, but he shows Bleach and Naruto on screen. Both stories ended but then had sequels. In Bleach, Ichigo's kid isn't his student. Even in the Hell chapter, we have yet to see him fight and Ichigo is still the protagonist. As for Naruto, the original ending had the world being brought to a peaceful era. All the Kages can meet in peace because the villages are allied. The tailed beasts aren't causing any trouble. That is vastly different from the warring nations at the start of Naruto. So how is it all for nothing? Furthermore, InuYasha now has a milked sequel, Yashahime, which is loosely canon, like Boruto. So we can either ignore the spin-off sequels and appreciate the solid endings as fans, or equally criticize the cash grab unnecessary sequels. I definitely got a deeper appreciation for InuYasha after watching this video. I didn't know about the 7 deadly sins, Bankotsu being a foil, or that there was a girl going into the past trope that InuYasha was trying to subvert. One of the biggest problems with the arguments in this video is the need to put down other manga to bring up another. When this is done, often the result is just lonely stating that InuYasha fits his preference rather than proving in some way that InuYasha is actually a well-written story. The second biggest problem is the hazy generalizations that accompany his comparisons. He'll say something along the lines of, most other anime do this inferior thing. But if you do a little research, you'll know that it's not true. And what's ironic is that a lot of the anime I use to disprove his generalizations are in the video itself, meaning that he has at least some knowledge on them. The third biggest problem is the not like other girls argument. That's all for this response. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, and check out my manga for free online. If you enjoy my content, please consider donating to my Patreon. All important links will be in the description.